What happens when you work in the space you're renovating? You get a hell of a mess. Anyway, I built myself this mobile workbench slash small parts storage cart, and I don't really like it. It's, I don't know, something about it is off. This is made out of 2x4s, and there's an upper frame, there's a lower frame, and the legs sit on the inside, so the corner is markedly different from my big workbenches, and that fact irks me. I also put together this table saw cart, for which incidentally I used 4x4 legs. I had these left over, but again they don't sit on the corner. I have this overhang here, and I don't know, it probably works, well it does work, but it's janky, and again it irks me, so quite literally I want to go back to the drawing board. I do most if not all of my drawing on paper like this, just squared, checkered or whatever it's called. Is it called gridded? Grid paper? Never mind what it's called. It's a great way to make literal drawings without having to invest time into becoming proficient in SketchUp or similar tools. Each of the squares on the sheet measures 5x5 millimeters, and depending on the scale of my projects, they can represent 5, 10 or even 20 centimeters if I'm sketching out something really big. In keeping with the static workbench dimensions, the mobile workbenches are supposed to be 60 centimeters deep or wide and 120 centimeters long. The height is supposed to be the same as the long static workbenches, 104 centimeters. Now next is time to do something that I think, as far as I remember, I've not done, and that's putting together a cut list. Good first step is to actually add the measurements for the timbers. I'm going to do this in centimeters because, like millimeters, nobody in their right minds should use millimeter measurements for anything more than just a couple of centimeters. The insane measurements that you see sometimes here, 1100 millimeters by 700 millimeters. Like, what's the point in giving thousands in millimeters where you can just say that's a meter? I don't know. A bit strange. So the whole side is going to be 94, and then the length of these ones is, that depends on the exact width of my 120 pieces. To get the exact measurements of what I need for these bits, I would have to select the timbers first, get their exact width and thickness, and determine what I need here. 3 benches is the goal. I have 120 piece up here and there, and of course on the other side, so that's 4 per bench times 3 is of course 12, so I have 120 centimeters times 12. Now, because each bench has 4 of these legs, that means 94 centimeters. There's 4 of them times 3, that's 12 too. I guess everything here is going to be 12, isn't it? As long as I need 4 of them per workbench. So the 75 bits times 12 the 42 bits times 12. Actually, what I probably should do is add another 42 bit in here, in the middle. One up there, one down here. So now that's not just 4, that's 6 per, which of course means that I need 18 of those. But at the shortest size, or the shortest length, I should be able to find these without having to sacrifice any of the longer lengths. Let's see what I have here then. So I have 12 bits of timber, or between roughly 70 something and 106 centimeters. So those can become my 75 centimeter pieces. Over there is, how many do I have? 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So those are 12 pieces, all between, let's say, roughly 110 and 150 centimeters. So those would become the longer legs, the 94 centimeter pieces. And then the longer ones at the bottom, they are 2.4 meters. So if I cut them in half, I have very much exactly 1.2 meter pieces there. Oh, well, maybe 1 or 2 millimeters shorter because of the width of the saw blade. The problem here is, I mean, there is 8 of them, so that would give me 16 1.2 meter long pieces, but some of them, like the one in the front here, are really twisted or bowed. So I would have to find the straight ones and then hope that there's enough. I've assembled all of the 75-ish centimeter outside timber pieces, and what was most important to me here is that they all measure about 95 millimeters on this side and 40 on that. They're pretty consistent now. There are some slight deviations here, but they're not because the timber here is wider or less wide. It's because it's not sitting completely even on this workbench here. That's why there is some overlappings or lippage. That's really the reason. But other than that, they're in pretty good shape. So I'll get them all cut to 75 centimeters. Of course, I made a mistake earlier. So the overall length, or the overall height, is 94. That, of course, is the total height without the wheels, because the overall height of the thing itself is 104 centimeters. The wheels are 10, leaves 94. But then, of course, that doesn't account for the worktop, which is an 18mm plywood sheet. So those 18 millimeters have to come off of the 94 centimeters. So that is, in fact, 92.2. So that would leave me with 73.2 for the outside bits. That's a bit of a weak moment. So there's my timber cut and collected. The 120 sides, the 92.2 inside legs, and the 73.2 outside legs. We just need to glue and screw those together. That's the inner timber, that's the outer timber. Now these are just cut-offs of the 120 centimeter sides, which I'm going to put here to simulate where the middle piece needs to go. And I'm just going to put down 3 beads of glue between the timbers just to give them a little bit more of adhesion. Now get them centered. I'll just have to feel around the edges here, make sure that they're flush. It's not going to be a 100% like 1/10 of a millimeter precise, but it's going to be good enough. Next, I'm going to clamp it down, only very little at first, just so that the one bit of timber doesn't slide. Of course, I'm not going to hold the legs together with just glue. I'm going to put some 5mm screws in there as well. These are 80mm long, simply because these timbers are just above 40mm each, so these should cinch the wood together nicely. Now that's my first batch of legs drying, and since I only have 12 of these 20 or 30cm clamps, and I want to use 3 on each, 4 legs at a time is the maximum I can do. Now I've got 12 of my combined legs lying here. I have 12 side timbers. I want to still use these massive 6mm thick leg screws, and that means I have to pre-drill, because of just how thick those screws are. There's a lot of timber to pre-drill the long 120cm sides. I have to pre-drill the legs, and also of course these will go all the way into the short side timbers. I also have to pre-drill those. That's a lot of pre-drilling, so I'm probably best off making a jig. So what I'll do very quickly is, I've forgotten what kind of measurements I used there, so I'm going to remeasure that. So it's 4 centimeters from one screw to the other, and that's good. It's a nice even distance, and it's 2 centimeters from this edge, so 3, 3, 2. Now this isn't going to be all that difficult. Let me think. I have 144 times that I have to pre-drill, so that more than justifies making a jig. Anyway, this isn't really all that complicated, so I know that I want to go 3 centimeters or 30mm from the sides, mark there, and 2 centimeters from here. I think this is a 4mm bit, and that's probably what I also want to use to pre-drill all of the timber, so that my pre-drilled holes are 4mm, the screws themselves are 6mm thick, so there should still be enough wood in there for the thread of the screws to bite into the wood and cinch it all together. Oh yeah, and to make sure that this is always nice and centered, I have these bits of timber here, making sure I can use this from whatever side I need, and then it'll always sit on a corner, giving me a nice square edge. These are 18mm, that's probably 3/4 inch, so 1.5 inch of 18 gauge. I'd call that jig a success. I think those nails are keeping the wood in place, or the plywood. I think this is actually good to use now. So why don't I get cracking? Now the legs, since they're going to sit like this, they also need to be pre-drilled, but they have to be pre-drilled not here, but down there. I'm also going to put in 2 6x80mm screws into the 120 side, so from the back. I'm going to pre-drill 4 holes, again just to minimize the danger or the risk of splitting any of the timber. With the pre-drilling done for now, so I have to switch out the drill bit and put in a Forstner bit, and this is for making little round recesses like this one. And the reason for this is that the leg screws that I want to use, that I have used, they do stick out a little bit, and I want them to sit flush, and they'll be nice and out of the way. Right, let's see if I can make if I can start sticking the first frame together now. And if I then sort of angle this guy under it, like so, probably have to get my trusty squares, make sure that this is actually 90 degrees. Well, seems square enough. Oh, that went easy enough. I've almost got the first frame assembled, and what I'm doing now is I'm measuring everything here individually. I could have just gone with, well, this is supposed to be this thick, these two pieces of timber together, so the middle part is always going to be, let's say, 43 point something, except it's not. They're all marginally different. Some of these are 8.2, others are 8.4, and of course that sort of adds up. If you have two sides that each vary by a few millimeters, that would be noticeable. So I'm measuring each of these. These ones were, I had 8.3, I had 8.2, 8.4 as well, and then of course plus whatever is on the other side. And each of these kind of like cross members here had different measurements depending on what the thickness of these two were. So this one's 8.2, and this one here looks like 8.4. Down there it's 8.6. Oh, sorry, 8.5. And 2. So 8.2 and 8.4 is 16.6. 60 minus 16.6, we're back at 43.4. So that's the length of the cross member I need to cut now. I don't know if this is visible, but each of these bits of timber are just capped and bowed, and everything like this is quite noticeably capped. Thing is, even if I had bought this new, it wouldn't be any different. It's impossible to find straight timber currently. $15cm wafer head leg screws, or lag screws. Nice. It's nice and sturdy, no obvious snags. Now there's a bit of a wobble here, but that's because of the uneven floor. Yep. Pretty accurate. This side here from corner to corner is 60, and this one here is 59.9 centimeters, or 59.9, and a smidge of whatever, so it's almost 60. Not quite, but almost 60. Which I guess, considering this is all scrap wood, is probably accurate enough. My three frames are almost assembled. These two very straightforward. They're going to replace that prototype there. This one here is a little bit different. So this 120 piece isn't sitting up here, it's a little further down, and that's because I want to make this the mobile version of the workbench there, where I have the miter saw sort of like sitting flush with the worktop, and I want to recreate this here in case I want to cut timber lengths that the garage in its completed I guess version will no longer be able to accommodate. Then I'll need to move that miter saw to a mobile workbench, move that into the middle of the workshop, and then I can go ahead and cut. And for that reason, I'll have to set this up. My first cart is nearly done, the wheels are still missing, and this is of course the cart that I could make using scrap wood because of this this aperture here. And getting wheels under these is actually pretty simple because of the doubled up 4x2s that make up the legs. I'm like moving them inwards by about 5mm because I don't want these to sit right on the corners. But that should do. Get that first screw in. And after that, it's all pretty simple. With that, the 3 cart frames are finally completed. What's still missing, of course, are the essential upgrades for these. The small part storage module, the worktop cover for the miter saw cutout, and whatever else I can come up with for these mobile workbenches. But this video is already 20+ minutes long, so I think I'll put all that footage into separate videos. Makes them easier for me to find as well, in case I need to look up a detail I've forgotten in a couple of years' time.